Hello, everyone. I'm so honored to be here with my friend Sadhvi and to introduce her new book to you. The next 30 minutes or so are going to be spent with us sharing a little wisdom from Sadhvi's 30 years on the banks of the Ganga River at the Himalayan foothills at an ashram in Rishikesh. And to share a little bit with you as a woman leader about the path of truly coming home to yourself during these very quickly changing moments that we're living in on planet Earth. Sadhvi, it's such an honor to be here with you.
Oh, Sage, so beautiful. So beautiful to be with you and your community.
For those of you that don't know Sadhvi, she is a renunciant monk or sannyasi living in an ashram on the banks of the Ganga River in India. She's originally from LA, California, and a graduate of Stanford University. She has a PhD in psychology, and she has dedicated her life to sharing the profound wisdom of the ancient Vedic tradition of India. Sadhvi's a best-selling author, a world-renowned speaker, a recipient of President Biden's award for a lifetime of service, and she serves on the United Nations Advisory Council on Religion. And she's an advocate and teacher of tens of thousands of women, especially women in India, in the area of healthy menstruation practices, which I know many of you are passionate about, as I also am, taking care of our sisters in the world. And in this book, Sadhvi, Come Home to Yourself, it's such a timely invitation. What inspired you to write this now? And what do you hope for women who use this book on their path of leadership?
Yeah, Sage. So it's been a beautiful genesis. I, as you mentioned, have been in India for the last almost 30 years and have been really blessed and gifted with answers, wisdom, lessons, tools, techniques out of the way that I was suffering and struggling so much in my life. And what I see when I come back to the West, especially America, is that people are struggling and suffering more and more and more. And so many of the questions that I'm hearing all over wherever I go are questions that I had really struggled with. And there are questions around finding peace, finding happiness, navigating life's challenges with grace and presence, this balance between being and doing, between, acting and motivating and visualizing and accepting and surrendering, and these sorts of questions, as well as a lot of the deeper stuff around trauma and pain and harm and addiction and all of that. And these are the questions also that I'm seeing every night in the really beautiful satsang that I have got such a blessing to be able to lead each night in Rishikesh at Parmarth Niketan. And I've seen the way that my life has been so transformed through the teachings and the way that so many people's lives have been transformed through them as well when I've been able to share them in satsang. And so the book is really an offering to the rest of the world who can't come and be with us on the banks of Ganga and sit in satsang after our beautiful evening Ganga Arati, the lighting ceremony, and to be able to share this wisdom and lessons and tools and techniques with a world that seems to me to just suffer more and more. And I've been more and more committed to wanting to offer with that world. And I feel also on kind of a dharmic and also karmic level that I've been given this really beautiful blessing of both deeply and intimately understanding that suffering, like in the cells of my very being. I know that suffering, I understand it, and having been able to become free of it. And I think if I didn't understand it so intimately, I wouldn't be able to be the bridge that I feel really blessed to be. So yeah, it's a very unique and amazing dharma that I seem to have come into this world with, and being able to share it and offer it and have people feel inspired and uplifted and also transformed is just such an incredible blessing.
Thank you so much for your work. I have goosebumps, and I'm excited for all of you to get Sadhvi's book in your hands. We'll be putting a link to it here with the video. I had the honor of being in Rishikesh recently and was given these mala beads and attended a fire ceremony on the banks of the river that Sadhvi had helped to curate. I met you at Claire Zamet's birthday party. And of course, we all fell in love quite quickly. And I think I loaned you my swimsuit so that we could all get in the river together. And I thought, I'm loaning this holy, sacred, gorgeous, incredible woman, feminine manifestation of gorgeousness, my swimsuit. And so we're immediately bonded in this way. And I really wanted to ask you that day about human suffering. And when I did, I asked you about suffering. I don't know if you remember this, but the first thing out of your mouth was, I always wonder if God regrets giving man free will.
Yes.
In that moment, I knew we were having the same conversation. I knew this was going to be a much more honest, much more raw conversation than I could have with some robotic religious leader. And so just thank you for bringing the authenticity of being an awesome feminine woman to the extreme sacred conversation that we're in around suffering. Can you say a little bit more about that for our listeners?
Yeah, sure. So it's an interesting juxtaposition for me because I live in India. And in India, obviously, of course, there's also a lot of suffering, but the suffering tends to be much more logistic. So the rainy season is coming and the roof leaks, or I have children and there's no place to send them to school, or my mother is sick and I don't have money to take care of her. And those sufferings are very real and very important, but they require infrastructure, they require resources, they require the engagement of human beings other than just myself to help alleviate that suffering. And that's the work that our ashram and our organizations are doing as well, in terms of on the ground building and running of schools and women's programs and medical care programs and environmental programs and all of that. And yet, in the West, what I'm seeing is a suffering that is of a really qualitatively different type. And I don't mean, of course, the homeless people on the street. I mean the community that most of us are moving through, where there is a suffering that is just as palpable, just as deep, just as debilitating, perhaps even more debilitating than the, oh my God, it's raining and the roof leaks suffering. And yet, it doesn't require any resources, any infrastructure, any other human being to alleviate the suffering. The suffering is a product of our minds, of how we think, of how we identify, of how we interpret. And therefore, the solution is something that is free, can be immediate, and is something that actually comes from inside. So it's a very exciting place for me to be moving through. On the one hand, I feel awful when I come back and see the suffering. But on the other hand, as weird as this may sound, it excites me because I feel like there are answers to this that are so much more quick, cheap, powerful than all of the schools that have to be built, hospitals that have to be built, roofs that have to be fixed, toilets that have to be built, etc., in a place like India. So Yeah, so that for me is what I'm seeing here is it's a suffering of how we think, how we identify, how we interpret. And we have the possibility, literally like this. And I don't mean it's easy, but it's simple. It literally is a shift in how we think. And that's a power that we have. And it's really powerful. And it's really exciting to me to be able to help people find that.
I'm excited too. And I think that there's probably so many women listening wondering, well, can you tell me more about how to shift it? And I would say to every single one of you who's wanting more, go get the book. Get 5 books, get 10 books, pass them out to your friends. I've had several moments in the last few days since getting this in the mail. Thank you, Sadhvi, where I was up against myself. One particular moment where I was really in a little bit of a fall to my knees moment around some personal transformation that's happening in my family, my personal family. And I opened up to the exact answer I needed. I had a few tears shed, and within moments, I had shifted my own reality to a place of connection with the divine and trust in this life journey. And so, can you say a little bit more about how we can shift and what's waiting for us in the book?
Yeah, God, there's so much. And it's beautiful that you raised about your personal family and personal struggles because a lot of times people think that spiritual teachings are all kind of based in the cosmos someplace, in the ether someplace, and it's going to be about just, a mantra to chant. And yet here we are as soul, as spirit, as source, but in human bodies and being given very human experiences and with a karmic package that each of us has been given. And of course, as we talked about in the river, part of that package is free will. And whether God is regretting it or not, it has not been rescinded yet. And so, presumably, there's a function in our karmic journey for harnessing the power of that free will to think about things differently, to react differently. And for me, one of the one of the things that for me is the simplest, quickest way to come through a lot of different challenges is simply by asking myself questions. The first place that I go is to berate myself. Oh my God, look at you. You're this spiritual person, and here you are feeling anger or frustration or resentment or not enoughness. And of course, as anyone who's ever berated themselves knows, it doesn't actually help. You don't feel better. It doesn't pull you out of it. And so, what I've learned over the years is instead of berating myself, to actually just ask myself a couple of questions, to take myself on a line of simple inquiry. Things like, is it worth it? Is it worth it? Okay, yeah, here I am feeling resentful and angry. Is it worth it? Am I benefiting in the moment in some way that makes it worthwhile to hang on to this? Okay, somebody was obnoxious. They were awful. Fine. Objectively speaking, in a court of law, I would win. But is it worth it? Like, does it improve my moment in any way to know that what I have is anger that 10 out of 10 people would agree with? Doesn't benefit me in any way. I'm still angry. I'm still burning inside from anger. My pulse is up. My blood pressure is up. My cheeks are red. I'm so focused like this that I cannot see the expanded vision. So whether 100 out of 100 people would say to me, yeah, damn right, you are right to be angry or not, is utterly irrelevant. Is it worth it in the moment? Is it worth it at all? So that's one of my favorite questions is simply, is it worth it? Are you benefiting either in the moment or in the long run in any way, shape, or form from the way that you are thinking, interpreting this moment. And if not, because for most of us, we say, well, no, but, like, how could I do anything else? No, but. And that's where my second favorite question comes in, which is there an alternative? Is there any other possible way of understanding this moment? And I love to be a creative writer, Sage. You know, I've never written a novel. I don't know if I ever will, but in my own mind, I'm a constant creative writer. So, for example, somebody cuts you off on the freeway when you're driving. And most of us react with, oh my God, idiot, he almost killed me. I almost died. And our heart is pumping, and maybe we swear at the guy, maybe we stew all day long that I almost died, my God. What if instead you just envisioned that that person had just received a phone call from a hospital where their son was lying on his deathbed after being in an awful accident, and he got a call that said, you know, if you want to see your kid alive, you better get to the hospital within the next 5 minutes. Now, is it okay that he cut you off in traffic? And just a simple retelling. And here's what's really important. It doesn't matter if it's true or not. I am not here as the one in charge of other people's stories. It's totally irrelevant. Why he cut me off, it doesn't matter. All that matters is, can I help myself understand the moment in a way that enables me to anchor in compassion, in love, and in freedom, rather than feeling like a victim? So asking myself questions, is it worth it? And is there an alternative? Like, is there any other way of thinking about or responding to this? You know, you show up at the office and somebody is really rude to you. Most of us, oh my God, I can't believe it. You know, I'm so nice. I do everything so nice. And this person is just obnoxious all the time. Well, write yourself a story. Are they going through a divorce? Is their parent dying? Is their child dying? You know, are they unable to make a mortgage payment? Did they just get an awful diagnosis? Who knows? And again, it doesn't matter. Because the only truth that matters is that each of us is soul, spirit, consciousness playing these roles in our human incarnation drama. And all we need to do is use the tools that we have, and I find storytelling a great one, to come back to the truth. And so I write stories that enable me to let go of the drama, let go of the narrative, let go of the reaction, and come back to myself.
Beautiful. I can see such a place for us as women leaders, women entrepreneurs, and storytellers to turn that capacity to be able to tell a different story back to ourselves so that we can show up and lead even when we look out externally and see the world going bonkers.
Yes.
What would you say to women who are a little disillusioned by this earthly realm? And as we're being called into leadership, we're looking out to see so many structures changing and human behavior that just completely leaves us feeling a little hopeless sometimes.
Yeah, so I have a lot of thoughts about this. Some are what you could call genderful, as in kind of applying to everyone, and then some specifically for women. So I'll start with the genderful thoughts first, and then we'll shift to our divine sisterhood. First of all, it's really important to realize that I am convinced that at this particular intersection of time and space, in this particular scene of the cosmic drama, no one has been given the role of sit this one out. And so the the peace that we find, the joy that we find, the anchoring, the grounding, the mindfulness, the connection that we find is critical. But it is critical as the means to an end rather than the end in and of itself. And so our spiritual practices, I really believe at this time, are not meant to be something that pull us away from this earthly realm of, I'm going to leave this world and just meditate in a cave, but I'm going to meditate in a cave or in my apartment, either way, an outer cave, an inner cave, but I'm going to do that so that when I stand up from my meditation cushion, I can then go back into the world, anchored, grounded, connected, and be a channel for the flow of the divine on earth. So I absolutely feel that at this moment, it is an all hands on deck moment. And every one of us is called to act, to serve, to be those channels. It's like St. Francis of Assisi said so beautifully, "Oh Lord, make me an instrument of your mercy, of your grace. Where there is darkness, let me bring light. Where there is injury, pardon," right? Where there is despair, hope. I mean, that's what we are being called upon to do. So that's the first genderful piece. As far as women, the first part, of course, applies fully, but there's another part because so much of that which is happening is not only counter to dharma and integrity and goodness and light and truth, but it's really in direct violation of so much of what you could consider the divine feminine principle, which is a principle, is an energy of nurturing, of nourishing, of creating and caregiving rather than destruction. And yet what we're seeing is so much destruction. And I think this is where it's also really important for us as women to understand from an archetypal or embodiment perspective that yes, we have this nurturing, nourishing, caregiving aspect. And we have the mama bear aspect. And sometimes it's really important to channel that mama bear aspect. You know, we just finished a couple of days ago the 9 days of Navaratri, which literally means 9 nights, dedicated to the divine feminine, to the mother goddess in the Hindu Vedic tradition. Twice a year in the autumn and the spring, we have these 9 days. And I won't go into the details of it so we can get to other questions, but the important piece is that each day we are honoring and celebrating a different aspect of the mother. And some of those aspects are the embodiments of what you think of when you think of the mother goddess. And it's nourishing and it's nurturing and it's soft and it's light. And then some aspects are, you know, Kali Ma and that mama bear energy. And there are times and there are places where that's really important. And in the same way that if her cubs are being, you know, threatened, the mama bear is not going to say, "Oh God, I really would just love to sort of disassociate myself from this moment. And I'm so tired of my cubs being threatened." But she's going to rush and do whatever she possibly can to protect them. And I think that that is where a lot of us are being called. And it's critical now, like perhaps no other time in history, to have, you know, Sage, what you and I were talking about, this yes and. So yes, I am spirit, soul, consciousness, divinity. And here I am in this body with this role, this gender, this dharma, this karma. And I'm going to stand up and I'm going to fulfill it. And I'm going to meditate and pray and do yoga and go on spiritual retreat, whether in my own room or across the world, to reconnect with that power.
It's so essential for us to realize that our leadership is so closely tied to how we are taking care of ourselves, the spiritual practice that Sadhvi's pointing us to, the practice of knowing that we are all being called. If that weren't true, then we wouldn't be here, right? And here you are sitting before us with all of this deep knowledge. And what I can feel is that you answered a deep call of your calling. And I can only imagine what your families and friends and what that was to fully choose a life in India. And I think that's not unlike what a lot of the women that are listening to this interview are going through in terms of being called into a different career path, being called to be a mentor, being called to change their life direction, career direction, where their life force energy is going, take risks that to some people in their life might feel completely unreasonable or quite frankly, like not wise. And you did that. You did that over and over and over again. What was that like? And can you share any wisdom as we wrap up for women that might be feeling a little discombobulated by this calling?
Sure. Yeah. So to me, it felt like I actually felt like I had no choice because who I was, even though I was not religious and I was not even somebody who says, oh, well, I'm not religious, but I'm spiritual. Even though I wasn't either of those things, I was someone deeply committed to truth. And what I felt, what I saw, what I experienced was so true that there was no way that I could pretend that I had not seen it, felt it, experienced it. And so, in order to stay true to me, I had to make the choice. And yeah, taking risks is scary. Absolutely. And especially when everybody's saying, oh my God, you're crazy. Oh my God, what's going to happen? And I had so many people say to me, first get yourself settled, get yourself established, make a name for yourself. And then if you want to go off on a year or two Peace Corps type of spiritual adventure, you can do it. But at least get yourself established first. And I felt like God and the universe, source, whatever word you use, it doesn't matter. But that wisdom of the universe doesn't make mistakes. And if you've been given a calling, a pull, an inner knowing in a certain direction, it's been given to you for a reason. And it's been given to you now for a reason. If the universe wanted you to do it 3 years from now, you'd be given the calling 3 years from now. The caterpillar doesn't get a signal today that says, hey, 6 months from now, make sure you climb that tree and weave a cocoon. It gets a signal that says, hey, climb the tree, like now. Start walking. Now start weaving. It doesn't get a signal that says, okay, 14 days from now, you're going to come out of this cocoon and you're going to fly. It gets a signal that says, now, burst out, now. And so if you've gotten that, if you're feeling that call, by all means do it. Is it risky? Well, it depends. Again, this goes back to the question about, is it worth it? Is it financially risky? Absolutely. Is it reputation-wise risky? Absolutely. Is it risky on the level of safety, security, knowing how your day is going to be, how your week's going to be, how your year's going to be? Absolutely. But I've never, ever heard stories of anyone on their deathbed who says, God, I wish I had played it safer. God, I wish I had, made the neighbors more jealous. Or God, I wish that I had just sort of done what everybody else did. I've never heard of even one person who says that. But what you hear all the time are people who say, God, I wish I had listened to my voice. I wish I had had courage. I wish I took risks. And of course, that does not mean to be foolish or reckless. It doesn't mean to be impulsive. There is a big difference between following an inner calling and being reactionary or impulsive. If it is true today, it will also be true tomorrow. By all means, sit with big decisions, meditate on them. Get advice from people you really respect, who you know actually have your best interest at heart, not who just need you to fulfill an agenda because then that makes them feel better about their own life choices. And this is a really important part, by the way, is one of the reasons that we get so much pushback from society and from others when we are going to take big, bold, risky decisions is, in all honesty, most people don't want to look at the mirror of their own life, and they don't want to see where they could have had more courage, where they could have, should have stepped up, walked forward more. And so it actually serves people's subconscious agenda for everyone else to make the same types of choices that they did, because then they don't have to look at their choices. And for you to stand up and take risks is scary for other people who are watching, because, oh my God, if you succeed, and even if you don't succeed, but you have the inner courage to try, is a mirror in their face of what they didn't do. So make sure that you're asking advice from people who themselves have made courageous choices, who themselves have taken risks, so that you don't get their subconscious projection onto you of needing you to fulfill their agenda by, towing the party line. So that's a really important piece. The other really important piece is to realize that what you're here for, ultimately, is to discover and experience the very truth of who you are as the divine in this body. And it's not about the role you get, the title you get, the money you get. Dharma, purpose, has zero overlap with financial income, with appreciation, with fame. Doing something that is your dharma, your purpose, doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be lucrative. It doesn't necessarily mean everybody's going to appreciate you or you're going to get on the front page of magazines. So don't use those as your standards for success. Because if that's your only standard for success, then, we already know how to do those things. But if you're looking for something deeper, fuller, more, something that at the end of the day, you feel like you're really living, don't necessarily expect that it's going to reward you in the same way that we've become accustomed to defining success. The success is much deeper. I know for me, just the level of fulfillment each day is so huge. And I'll end with a little way that I think about what we need individually and what we need in terms of bringing to the world as leaders. And it's what I call 4 C's. And the first C is connection. And it all comes back to your spiritual connection. And it doesn't matter your path. It doesn't matter how you conceive of or connect with the divine, with a name, without a name, doesn't matter. It could be the tree in your backyard. It could be a piece of music, a piece of art, but a deep connection to that which is bigger than, more than, higher than this physical body. That which is eternal, that which is infinite, a connection with that. And that which is not separate from you. So it's not this body, but it is who you are. And out of that connection arises courage. Because it takes courage to make these decisions. It takes courage to walk in the face of what society says, what our neighbors say, what our family members say. And out of the courage arises creativity. Because if you're going to do things differently, or do different things, you need creativity. Doing the same things in the same way we've always done them gets us to exactly where we are today. So we need creativity, but in order to be creative, you've got to be courageous. And last is compassion. Because when I'm acting in this way, it's not just about my money or my title or my career or my success or my bank account. It's about me that is not separate from every other being on this planet. So my success becomes interwoven with the happiness and the harmony of every other creature in this universe. And not that that becomes my responsibility to provide it to them, but it becomes interwoven. So flowers as they blossom fill me with joy, connected to it, connected to the universe, and connected to a ripple impact of influence of the decisions that you make. You know, quantum physics is telling us exactly what spirituality has been saying for thousands of years. Whatever you do impacts and ripples into every other corner of the world. So as you create, as you co-create your life, recognize that you're not living in a vacuum and you're living interwoven and interconnected with all. So make sure that those ripples are ripples of harmony, are ripples of health, are ripples of happiness. And that's when the universe really supports you and carries you along. I could share maybe next time fun personal stories of kind of what that looks like when you get in alignment with the universe and just the miracles, the way that the universe just shows up with miracles for your life. And I'm so excited to be part of all your journeys and to be together with you all in community.
I look forward to part 2. We're going to hold you to it. And
Done.
I am really wanting to sign off with a heartfelt invitation to grab a copy of Sadhvi's book so that you can keep coming home to yourself and keep using the tools and the strategies and the stories in this book to create that alignment with the divine, that alignment with the miraculous. We've all had those moments where we know we are where we're meant to be. And I invite each of you into that moment right now, that you are exactly where you need to be with the gifts and the tools and the skills that you need to navigate this next chapter. And Sadhvi and I are standing alongside you with our hands on your back, whispering in your ear, you can do this. You've been called. Thank you, sister, for saying yes. Thank you for your courage and your compassion. And Sadhvi, thank you for taking the time today. What an honor.
So beautiful to be with you, Sage. And thank you so much for all of the beautiful work that you are doing with all of this incredible divine feminine Shakti and helping to channel it in just such exciting and beautiful directions.
Bye, everybody. Huge,
So much love.
huge love and hugs flying out to you right now. Mwah.